repeat what you just told me? No, would you mind repeating what you just told me? I really appreciate it. Go ahead, you can take a picture. I don't mind.
Oh, it's okay.
Careful, I don't want you to hit her in the face. I'm no threat to anyone, but what did you say just a second ago? It really struck me.
About what?
As you were walking by, you were telling me about your I believe your religious beliefs.
Yes.
Yeah.
In Judaism, abortion is allowed.
Okay.
Because it protects the life of the mother, which is more valid because the life of the fetus isn't until it is viable.
Okay. Why do you believe that? Why do you believe that?
You're supporting a man who's out here supporting the death and destruction of our democracy.
All right, ma'am, go ahead and talk to me. You can leave the young man alone. It's okay. It's okay. I got this. Why do you think it's right to not protect both lives? Because I agree with you that the life of the mother is important.
I think that the life of the mother is paramount.
It's paramount?
I actually think bodily autonomy is paramount,
Okay.
but y'all wouldn't know anything about that because your bodily autonomy has never been questioned.
So the body inside the body, what about that autonomy?
Fetus isn't a body. It's a fetus.
By biological definition, it's a body. Yeah.
It doesn't have a brain.
Okay. So at what point did you start being a human?
When I had full brain function.
So do you believe that only abortion should happen before there's full brain function?
Yes, I agree with that.
Or do you believe that there should be? A lot of people disagree with that, though. They tend to go to the exception clauses, or they go to various different things.
And the next time someone needs a kidney, I hope you're first in line to donate, and I hope the government can tell you have to donate because you're going to go save a life.
Yeah, what's the comparison there?
The comparison is what you're telling women is that their body doesn't matter, that their bodily autonomy is no longer valid. The second someone implants a fetus. Now, mind you, a fetus is not a human. A fetus has potential.
Yes, it is.
What do you think the word fetus means,
ma'am?
ma'am?
By definition, a human.
So, okay, go ahead.
I'm not fucking done, dude.
Go ahead.
So what happens is you basically tell women your rights don't matter. The second you become a host for something, whether you agree to it or not, which by the way, plenty of women do not agree to it, there's a 25% chance that every woman in this audience has been sexually assaulted by someone who looks a lot like you. So let's keep moving on from that. That what you tell women is that they have no right to their own body, their own choices, it doesn't matter. So that means because potentially that body could host potential life. Now, the flip side of that argument is the government can come in and say your kidney is up for grabs for somebody else because it could actually save a life.
So,
That is what that means, dude. It means that you don't actually own your body. So what you're saying is that because you think that abortion is evil, which by the way, I don't actually care if you think abortion is evil. I fully support that right. That is within your purview to do so. You don't get to tell anyone else how they feel about it. Same as I don't get to tell you how you feel about your fucking religion. It's all fucking made up. I don't really give a shit, but it's your prerogative. You're just not allowed to push your prerogative onto other people. Now, if you're going to push your prerogative onto people like women who have uteruses and have given and may potentially at some point in their life give birth, whatever. But that means that your kidney, your pieces of your liver, because you can survive without those things, are now subject to government control because you could go save a life with that thing, but you're not. You're not forced to be on
your
a
argument breaks down,
are you?
though.
Because you could potentially save lives.
So your argument breaks down.
Save lives, real lives. They're actually here breathing, thinking, and having original thoughts. You could actually be forced to save those lives. But you won't do that because you think because you have a small penis that somehow you have a bodily autonomy and the rest of the population fucking doesn't. Piss off, dude, and fuck your religion.
So ontologically, humans are humans from conception. You deny science when you say that they're not humans.
Hey, I've got a question for you.
That is not true.
When a woman or a female person has a miscarriage, why don't we have a
still
funeral?
disagrees with you.
We do.
Well, friends, today I'm going to be doing something a little different than what I normally do. I'm going to be essentially reacting to the video you just saw. We were at the Women's March the Saturday before last doing evangelism. We actually had our annual psalm sing and prayer event at the Idaho State Capitol building that morning there at the Rotunda. And when I scheduled that, I found out right around that time when I was inviting people that I happened to schedule it for the same day as the Women's March. So we stayed and met up with members of the White Rose Resistance and tried to engage with people mostly about abortion as the primary thing the Women's March was trumpeting was their ballot initiative, which is a genuine threat here in Idaho that even though compared to most of the country we have quote-unquote strict pro-life laws, they're looking to get a ballot initiative out that would overturn those laws and try to seek to essentially amend our state rights to make, they call it reproductive freedom, but to make baby murder an inherent right, which is absurd. You can't legislate or regulate murder, and yet so often that's been the case. So we went out to engage with them. Just I wanted to give some feedback and breakdown. One, I wanted to respond to, a couple of the arguments that I was having with that lady. A couple of the things she said that I, wasn't able to give a full refutation to, since she walked off in a huff. I also, just the, full disclosure here, we're going to be looking at, as you can see from the screen share here, her argument that the Talmud argues for allowing abortion, which I did the research so that you can see for yourself. She wasn't kidding. And so that's something that we need to grapple with, that we're going to look at here as well. Also, just wanted to make a couple of quick comments. One thing that may have humored you at the end there is the young man who decided to interview me when she left. The first thing he says is, when women or female pregnant people, like, I think he was trying to say birthing persons and be politically correct, but didn't quite get to it. But he looks at me and he says, so if you believe that, they're human from conception, why don't you have funerals for miscarriages? And I simply responded, well, we do. I've officiated them at my church. And he didn't really know what else to say. He asked me a few more questions, and ultimately it's like, okay, well, till later then. I was kind of left without much to say. So that's unfortunately what we run into. One of the things I like to point out to people that argue the way that this lady did, that the babies don't have worth until they have a certain level of development or function, is just the absurdity of that notion. I talked to a different lady who was trying to tell me that the dependency was the fact that was the issue, that because they were dependent, the mother has the right to not have to deal with that dependency. And so I asked her, I was like, you have kids? She said, yes. At what point were your children fully independent? And she said, well, when they graduated and left the house, I suppose. I was like, so before they graduated, you could just murder them whenever you wanted for your own convenience? And she looked at me like I was crazy. Like, you realize it's the same argument, though. The infant that's born comes through what some people have called the magical birth canal, comes through the birth canal, all of a sudden now has rights, no rights, rights. What happened? Nothing. It's absurd. That child still is dependent on the mother for nursing and for sustenance and protection. Our children are dependent upon us. So it's a terrible argument, but one that so many people make. Before I dive into this lovely article from the Torah.com, I do want to be forthright. This lady, as you could tell, was quite antagonistic, very upset, using strong language in front of children, and insulting. You should know that this isn't the first time I've talked to her. I've engaged with her twice in just the past year at both of the Pride festivals here in the Boise area. One in the town my church is in Nampa, at the Canyon County Pride Festival, where I had quite a long engagement with her, and then again in Boise at the Pride Festival as well. So it's no surprise that at these various rallies and different events that you tend to see some of the same characters. One of the guys I engage with regularly, he actually came and protested our hymn sing and prayer event. His name is Eric. He goes by Flag Dad. Some of you may recognize him as the guy who challenged Charlie Kirk to a gentleman's duel at Boise State. We've engaged with him for several years now. This lady, as well as members of the Satanic Idaho group, are regularly at these events as the Rainbow Brigade, as counter protesters, if you will, or protesters to any Christian presence. So this wasn't the first time I've engaged with her. I will say that this particular lady is always very hot and hostile right from the beginning. I've tried to have calm, collected conversations with her, and she's usually just straight to anger. So unfortunately, I have not had the opportunity to really be super productive in my conversations with her, but Lord willing, when I engage with her in the future, May the Lord open a door. But let's jump into this, though. So the reason I pulled out my phone and started recording is that she walked by and she recognized me. So she came up behind me, and she started yelling out as I was walking, "Wherever this man goes, oppressed women follow." Which, I think that's my wife says that should be a bumper sticker now. She was very upset that she was so oppressed at home that day, making donuts. It was pretty hard on her while I was out there talking to these lovely people. But no, it's interesting that they go straight to personal attack. I do also think it's interesting that when I engage with people like this, inevitably they end up insulting my masculinity, followed by insulting my wife when they find out I'm married. A very feminist thing is to insult women. I've discovered, particularly small women in the womb, that they have no care for. But yeah, instant attacks. But she was upset right from the get-go. So she kind of walked by and said, the fetus doesn't have rights. And I said, ma'am, what do you mean? And it's a human. Humans have inherent rights. And she shouts out, well, I'm a Jew, and my religion says that you can have abortion. And so I pulled up my phone, and that's why the video starts with me saying, I'm sorry, what'd you say? So sure enough, did the research. Obviously, I know from the actual Torah, the first few books of the Bible, the law of God, that there is laws actually written. It's where we get lex talionis, that actually the Old Testament gives us this passage that talks about if a woman is struck and the baby dies, that there is actually blood for blood, life for life. It's actually a very powerful passage in the Old Testament. That being said, the Talmud, which is sort of the New Testament for the Judaizers, if you will, the continued rabbinic tradition is sort of the spoken oral tradition of the Pharisees of Jesus' day, and then some, and then written down later at a later date. This is sort of the rabbinic commentaries and teachings. Well, sure enough, what the Talmud teaches sounds a lot like a leftist ideology. A fetus is like its mother's thighs. In other words, the Talmud actually recognizes and says that the baby inside the womb actually is just part of the mother's body, which you and I know is false, right? That the baby inside your womb, the body inside your body, is not your body. Bodily autonomy, which she was arguing for, is a ridiculous notion when you forget the fact that the body inside your body has its own autonomy by your own logic. So it's sad to see that the same line of argumentation that we hear from the leftists and the Marxists and the radical feminists is right here actually in Talmudic tradition. Fetus is like its mother's thigh. It goes on to talk about how in the first 40 days of pregnancy, that it is mere water. And then even after 40 days, on the 41st day, the only thing that really changes, according to the sages, is that you're now ritually unclean and you have to treat it as if it's like a menstrual cycle or something. So they have to go through certain purity. Pregnant daughter eating ritual food looks at executing a pregnant woman. If a woman is pregnant and she commits a capital crime and she's pregnant, unless she is in labor, no big deal. Just kill her. The baby inside has no rights, according to the Talmud. It does say if she's on the birthing stool, however, that then all of a sudden they have rights. So the Talmud essentially would say that unless the woman is actively in birth on the birthing stool, the baby has no rights, which is absolutely absurd. So in certain circumstances, the Talmud would permit abortion all the way up until delivery, according to this. Again, here it continues and restates again that they are one body. And so they treat it as if it's cutting off a part of its own body. Aborting the fetus before execution, again here, says if a woman is taken out to be executed, they first strike her in the abdomen so that the fetus dies first to avoid her being disgraced by a post-mortem miscarriage. They're not worried about the death of the infant inside the womb. They're worried about her bleeding after they execute her. This is absurd, right? No concern is expressed about the life of the fetus. moving from its place. It says, what is the reason that we stay the execution when she is in labor? Since the fetus has moved from its place in the uterus, it is a separate body. So when they see it beginning to move, come down the birth canal, now they see it as having rights. Again, there's more things here, again, making the argument that it is really the main concern is about impurity and sort of how it affects you. Desecrating the Sabbath to save a fetus. So here's something that's interesting. Just like we see what Christ does, there is times where you can violate the Sabbath if you're doing a greater good, right? This idea. Here it says, if a woman has seated on the birthing stool and died on the Sabbath, a knife is brought, her belly is opened, and the fetus is removed. So if she's in active labor and she dies in labor, even if it's on the Sabbath, they will remove the baby and try to save it, but only if she's in active labor. Further down it says here, you might have said, in the case of the rebel, the person was alive and is presumed to have remained alive. Here in the case of the fetus, there was no such presumption of life, so it teaches us that the Sabbath is nevertheless to be desecrated. So they view the baby as sort of being like a person who maybe a building fell on top of and it's buried in the rubble. It's okay to try to save them from the rubble, right? Samuel's phrasing of the law, a woman sitting on the birth stool, implies that it is active labor that gives the fetus a status of presumed life, permitting the violation to save its life on the Sabbath. Abortion during a dangerous childbirth. This is her main argument, was that the Talmud permits abortion to save the life of a mother. When a woman is in difficult labor, one may cut up the fetus in her womb and take it out limb by limb, for her life takes precedence over its life. Once most of it has come out one way, one may not touch it, for one may not push aside one soul for another. Again, this is evil, friends. Now, I will say, I recognize that there was a lot more danger in childbirth in many ways when you consider the marvels of modern medicine. We do have a lot of things at our disposal in very tricky or challenging pregnancies to try and save the life of a mother. Frankly, nowadays, there is no reason for this ever to happen, considering we have things like C-section and other medical procedures available to help preserve the life of both the child and the mother. There should never be a time where we have to murder a child. It's just not actually a case. It's a myth. It's a lie. It's something that the feminists will repeat, but it's not true. And so here we see, again, the argument that this is a absolutely viable option. It says the later part of the Mishnah makes it clear that if the fetus is considered an equal life only once it is mostly born. Otherwise, it is a pursuer. So it's equivalent to a person who chases after another with murderous intent, and thus killing it should be considered an act of self-defense. Again, where have I heard this argument? Children are called parasites. I saw an interview with that same lady that I was engaging with. I think it was Idaho Freedom Foundation. Had an interview with her, and she referred to the baby as a parasite. Again, this parasitic language is awful. Self-defense. You're treating the baby as if it's an attacker inside its own mother's womb. This is absolute absurdity. So again, we see this as different stages. This is kind of the last thing I wanted to hit before I make my closing argument against her kidney transplant. It says, until the fetus is formed 40 days, the fetus has no status at all. From 41 days to active labor, the fetus is part of the mother. Okay, still no rights. Active labor, the fetus is independent, though inferior life. So in active labor, it is considered alive, but its life always takes the backseat to the mother. So even partial birth abortions are okay, according to the Talmud, if you believe the mother's life is in danger. Once the head or more of the fetus is outside the mother, it is a human life like any other. So according to the Talmud, human beings have no rights until legitimately they are taking their breath as they come out of the womb. And I guess technically before they take that first breath, depending on when the umbilical cord's cut, et cetera, et cetera. While the rabbis never addressed the question of abortion in the first two stages, nothing in these texts implies it would be forbidden. Certainly they would not have seen it as a form of murder. Only in stage 3 does the fetus become a life. And even there, it is an inferior status to a living, breathing people. Only upon leaving the mother's body does the baby become a full life in rabbinic thinking, making it equal in value to that of the mother. Partially inside the mother, not equal. Outside the mother, equal. Again, stage of development, location, these are the same silly arguments that we still hear feminists making today. And it grieves me that this is standard teaching. And there is connections here when we look at sort of the leftist and Marxist ideologies that exist. And again, I know this is probably offensive to some people, and I'm not trying to be overly, like I'm trying to be sensitive to that. But let's just be blunt. It's right in front of us. We have to recognize, friends, that the Talmud is a evil work of idolatry and man-made mythology. It has no more good in it and no more good for the Christian church than the Quran does or the Book of Mormon. They should be all thought of in the same way as extra biblical texts with no true authority, that wherever they may say something true or good, it is by God's grace alone that it may be in alignment with Scripture. But it is not a source of truth for us as Christians. In fact, it is something that I think many of us have no idea exists with such evil conduct, such evil counsel. Could you imagine going to a Christian pastor and hearing this sort of counsel? Absurd. If so, find a new church. That person is not a Christian. Causing a miscarriage, again, it says when two or more parties fight, this is the actual scriptural case, and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and the fetus comes out, but there is no damage, essentially no harm done. The one responsible shall surely be punished according to the woman's husband may act. The payment may be as a reckoning. So in this sense, the baby at that point is treated more like property if there's no harm, right? A fatal accident. But again, says he surely shall be fined for the fetus. Exodus 21:22. Goes on to talk about mortal harm, though, if there's no mortal harm to the woman, not to the fetus. So they're adding commentary saying that the mortal harm is not concerned with the baby in their interpretation, but rather with harm to the mother, which is, again, fascinating. It says they both raise alternative readings, but definitely reject the possibility that the fetus is treated legally as a life. In Christian tradition, when we exegete this passage, that is not how we read this. We read actually quite the opposite, that it is making an argument for the validity and sanctity of the infant's life. Now, we also recognize in Scripture that we see God saying things like in David in Psalm 139, saying that you knit me together in the hidden place, right? In the hidden place, you make me to know wisdom. This idea that God is intricately knitting us together, that Jesus, we're told in Colossians, creates all things and all things are made through him and he holds all things together. We see this powerful picture of John the Baptist kicking in the womb and filled with the Holy Spirit, it says, from the womb. Surely a creature indwelt by the Holy Spirit is alive, has a soul, is truly human. Jesus himself is the product, if you will. His human nature, his human body is the product of the overshadowing of the Holy Spirit in the conception in the womb. We see that the Bible teaches humanity from conception truly, consistently. And so it is an absurdity for us to take that a fetus is not an independent life. It's not true. Biologically, from the laws of biogenesis, what does the word conception even mean? To conceive something is its beginning, its origin, right? We recognize that even if it has a embryonic and a zygote and a fetal stage of development, that it is 100% human from conception. And as such, we should treat all human beings who are made in the image of God, wonderfully and fearfully made, with the same equal rights and protections, which is what we fight for. So to that note, she made the argument, well, bodily autonomy. If you really want to save lives, you should allow the government to just go ahead and require you to give up a kidney or whatever anytime you want. You shouldn't complain about that because, well, you have it and it's available any more than the mother should have a right to complain about having to care for the infant growing in her womb from her own natural resources, if you will. Again, this is not a one-to-one comparison by any means. The argument, as I was trying to tell her, breaks down. It is nowhere near the same situation to say that a woman who, in the overwhelming majority of instances, I'm well over 90% of instances, has had consensual, intentional relations with a man and has conceived of a child. And that is somehow akin to a person who is dying on a transplant list and the government saying that you now forcibly against your will. What she's really making a comparison to is rape. She's trying to say that, well, what about the person who has forcibly had a child implanted inside of her that she didn't want? Okay? Those are tragic things. The irony here is that we say things like, well, you put the rapist to death, not the baby. And the strange thing is that many of these pro-choice people think that we're monsters for wanting to actually punish the one who did this evil thing rather than the infant conceived who is innocent, an innocent third party in this tragic event. They want to correct evil with more evil. We want to correct evil with justice and mercy. No comparison. So it's not a true comparison, though. We cannot look at it in the same light. Someone who wants to give up their own organ willingly to try and save another life is a commendable thing, not something, obviously, that I would say the government should allow, should be able to force people to come in and do. But to try and draw that as a parallel comparison to what we're talking about with the overwhelming majority of pregnancies and abortions, and even if you were to tie it to the tragic ones conceived through things like rape, it still breaks down as a viable argument against abortion, because at the end of the day, even though she said that she was only for it in certain circumstances, nevertheless, she's out there fighting for all rights. It's evil, friends. It's evil. So what can we as the church do about it? One, we need to have pastors and men in particular willing to go out and stand toe-to-toe and have these difficult conversations. Two, we need to actually preach about these things from the pulpit, teach about these things, teach apologetics, how to argue the very arguments that I just made, so that we can help educate people and help actually dismantle these myths and bad arguments. Third, and very importantly, we also have to guard our hearts from bitterness. We need to pray for women like this. She's a very angry, bitter woman with much malice in her heart, who I'm sure would be happy if I got hit by a car. Straight up, I'm sure. And you know what? I believe God can save her. And I could see her seated in my church listening to me preach one day, if God so wills it. And we have to have a genuine, gracious spirit to bring the gospel, even to these people who treat us like enemies. And Lord willing, we'll see that. So guard your heart from bitterness. Also, refute the evil claims. Do not balk at the labels, the slanderous statements that they may make. Do not shrink back when they insult you, as she certainly did to me. Don't laugh at it in the face of it. Keep going and point to the truth. Point to the truth that there is something worth fighting for, and that they are the ones who are actually upholding an evil practice and position. And then, obviously, pray, be active Christians, be faithful. And I'd call all of you to do whatever you can to promote equal protection and equal justice laws in your state. Here in Idaho, I'd encourage you to support Brandon Shippey. He's a senator who has brought forth a bill of equal protection this last year, and this year he's seeking to get it printed and brought forth as well in the Senate State Affairs Committee. I'd encourage you to reach out to the Senate State Affairs, to particularly reach out to Guthrie, the chairman, ask him to print this, that he has a moral and civil obligation to make sure that this bill gets debated. Reach out to the other committee members and urge them likewise that this is such an urgent bill. It needs to be discussed. It needs to be argued on its merits, and we need to have this discussion right here. Do we believe that Idahoans in the womb have rights or not? Because right now our laws, as much as we think they're protecting them, are not. I was at Planned Parenthood this past Thursday in Ontario, Oregon. It's less than an hour from Boise, really. It's very close. All the employee cars, including the abortionist, Idaho plates. The abortionist is a doctor, as I understand it, in McCall. Drives down on Thursdays so she can tear apart babies in the womb in Ontario, Oregon. Every single car that I've ever seen pull into that place has had Idaho plates. Now, it's tragic when the Oregonians do it, don't get me wrong. But if we think that abortion has ended here in Idaho, we are lying to ourselves. Women can easily click on a QR code and get instructions and order pills and manage an abortion at home, where they, by definition, are the abortionist, and yet they are treated with exemption. When they have malice aforethought to go and click on what they need to click on, to order the pill, to get what they need, to murder their child, and all we're concerned about is water contamination? No, it's evil, friends. But even then, they can go and they can be referred by Planned Parenthood in Idaho to Planned Parenthood in Ontario, Oregon, and still have the abortion done. Friends, we have a lot of work left to do here. Babies are still being murdered in Idaho, and our little Idahoan neighbors need the church in particular to speak up. So I'll close with this. Francis Schaeffer was known to have said that every abortion clinic should have a sign out front that says "Open by permission of the church." Friends, we've been silent too long. Too many Christians have been taught to not engage in civil matters or politics, that somehow that's contrary to the gospel. Friends, the gospel informs Christian life. The Roman centurion who becomes a Christian doesn't cease to be a centurion. Now he's a Christian centurion. And we better hope that he was a different kind of centurion after he was saved. The jailer likewise. Whatever we are, whatever we're called to, as citizens of a state, as citizens of a nation, we are called to be citizens of heaven first. And we must live our lives boldly for Christ. So I want to encourage you. I hope this video is helpful. Be educated about what's being taught, about what's being said, about different positions, about even the fact that modern Judaism and the Talmud would permit such barbaric and evil practices, such as ripping apart infants in the womb, dehumanizing the least of these in the safest place that should exist for them, their own mother's womb. Meanwhile, the leftists who are afraid of Handmaid's Tale, who are thinking that we just want to have some sort of weird baby farm with all of their bodies, are actually using themselves as baby farms for homosexual couples and designer pregnancies and surrogacy. It's a nightmare. Children are being ripped from their biological mothers, from the heartbeat that they heard for the past 9 months, and handed to strangers. And then IVF's a whole other story. Bottom line is, friends, we have been doing evil things. Blood is on our hands. And we sit ourselves now offering our children to Molech, looking at the foreigners and women that rule over us and the judgment of God before us. And we ask ourselves, why is this? Friends, we need to quit only treating the symptoms. We need to treat the root problem. Yes, that means the heart needing to turn to Christ, but it also means ending child sacrifice. And until we do these things, I fear that we will see no true revival and restoration in our community. So join us in fighting the good fight. Do not grow weary in doing good. And may we be faithful servants who do not bury our talents in the dirt, but invest wisely our time for the kingdom of God. So when Christ returns, he will see us as a faithful servant who has been doing the work of Christ, preaching the gospel, and doing everything we can to hold back those who would stumble to the slaughter. May we be faithful, friends. Don't fear the enemy. Don't fear those who would slander us for our positions. Be faithful, friends. God is faithful, and he will give us the strength to do it. Till next time, take care.